The first time I saw her, she was standing at the edge of my yard, one hand on her hip, the other holding a phone up like she was recording. A deep frown creased her face, her eyes scanning my house like she was inspecting a crime scene. I was pulling weeds from my garden, hands covered in soil, sweat clinging to my forehead. I wanted to ignore her. I should have ignored her. But something about the way she stood there, like she belonged here and I didn't, sent a pulse of irritation through me. "Can I help you?" I called out, standing up and brushing dirt from my jeans. Her lips twisted into a tight, fake smile. "Oh, I was just wondering when you were planning to clean up your yard. It's bringing down the property value, you know." I blinked. "Excuse me?" I looked around. My lawn was neatly trimmed. The flowers in my garden bed were thriving, and the house, while older, was well kept. Nothing about my property screamed eyesore. Meanwhile, across the street, her place had a massive inflatable Santa still up in March. Before I could respond, she gave a little laugh, tucking a strand of overly bleached hair behind her ear. "I just think it's important for all of us to keep the neighborhood looking nice. Don't you?" That was the moment I knew. She was one of those. I had moved into this suburban neighborhood 6 months ago, hoping for some peace and quiet after years of city life. First, things seemed fine. My next-door neighbor, Mr. Patel, was friendly and always waved when I passed by. The older couple down the street, the Johnsons, dropped off homemade cookies when I first moved in. It wasn't a diverse neighborhood by any means, but I didn't think much of it until now. Because this woman, this Karen, wasn't making a suggestion. She was making a statement. I didn't belong, and she was going to make sure I knew it. Over the next few weeks, the disturbances were subtle. A glare from across the street when I parked my car in the driveway. A passive-aggressive note left on my door about neighborhood standards. A call to animal control because my rescue dog, Duke, looked aggressive. He was a golden retriever. Nothing serious. Nothing that couldn't be explained away as a misunderstanding. But I knew better. Then the trespassing started. It was little things at first. A gate left slightly open when I knew I had locked it. My garden tools moved around in the shed. Small footprints in the dirt near my back fence. I mentioned it to Mr. Patel once and he shrugged. Probably just kids. Maybe. Or maybe someone wanted to make me uncomfortable. And if that was the case, they were about to find out I wasn't going anywhere. I woke up to the sound of Duke growling. Not his usual sleepy grumbles. The deep, guttural warning growl that sent a chill up my spine. I sat up, heart pounding, and glanced at the clock. 2:47 a.m. Duke was at the window, ears perked, tail stiff. I slipped out of bed, padding over quietly, and peered through the blinds. Nothing. The street was silent. The moon cast long shadows over my lawn, but everything looked still. Yet Duke knew something was off. His nose twitched, his body tense. I stepped back, swallowing the unease creeping up my throat. Maybe it was just a raccoon, or a stray cat, but deep down I knew better. The next morning, I found footprints in my garden. Small, careful prints like someone had tiptoed through my yard. The soil was disturbed near the fence, and one of my potted plants was knocked over. I glanced across the street. Karen was outside, standing on her porch with a steaming mug, watching me. She wasn't even pretending to be subtle. I exhaled slowly. "Morning," I called, forcing a neutral tone. She sipped her coffee, eyes narrowing. "You know, we have a neighborhood watch for a reason. I keep an eye on things around here. Do you?" I didn't say it. Instead, I wiped my hands on my jeans and met her gaze. "Did you see anything last night?" She tilted her head, her expression shifting into something almost amused. "Oh, I did hear something. But, it's hard to tell who is coming and going these days." There it was. The not-so-subtle you people comment wrapped in a polite smirk. I clenched my jaw. "Well, if you ever do see something, feel free to let me know." Her smile widened. "Oh, don't worry. I always keep records." With that, she turned and walked inside, leaving a pit of irritation burning in my chest. Over the next few days, the disturbances kept happening. A section of my fence mysteriously came loose. My garbage cans were tipped over, only mine, not my neighbor's. Duke started barking randomly at night, pacing near the back door. And then came the final straw. I stepped out one morning to find my mailbox open, and my mail gone. I checked the ground, thinking maybe the wind had knocked it over. Nothing. I walked up and down the street, glancing at my neighbor's mailboxes. All closed. Just mine had been tampered with. That's when I saw her. Karen, standing at the end of her driveway, smirking. A slow rage bubbled inside me, but I forced myself to breathe. She wanted me to react. She wanted me to explode so she could play the victim. Not happening. I smiled at her. A slow, deliberate smile. She frowned, as if thrown off. Good. I had no proof yet, but she'd just made a mistake. And I was going to make sure she regretted it. I wasn't one to let things slide. The morning after my mail went missing, I walked straight across the street to Karen's house. Duke trotted beside me, sensing my tension. She was outside, pruning her roses like she had all the time in the world. The moment she saw me, her lips curled into that same smug smirk. "Karen," I said evenly. She glanced up, feigning surprise. "Oh, good morning. What can I do for you?" I crossed my arms. "My mail disappeared yesterday." She gave an exaggerated gasp. "Oh, how terrible. You should report that. We must keep our neighborhood safe." Her words dripped with condescension, but I refused to take the bait. "I plan to," I said, "which is why I wanted to ask if you saw anything." Her smile didn't waver. "Oh no, but sometimes when people don't belong in a neighborhood, they attract the wrong kind of attention." There it was. No more subtlety. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. "You mean criminals, right?" She waved a hand dismissively. "I mean outsiders, strangers, certain types of people who bring trouble wherever they go." I took a slow breath. I wasn't giving her the reaction she wanted. Instead, I nodded. "Well, good thing I installed security cameras," I said, watching her expression closely. For the first time, the smirk faltered. Just slightly. "You did." I let the silence stretch. Her fingers tensed around the gardening shears. "Oh yes," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Real high-tech stuff. Night vision, motion detection, catches everything." She recovered quickly, giving a light laugh. "Well, that's wonderful. I'm sure it'll help." But there was something uneasy in her eyes now. That night, I stayed up late, watching my newly installed security feed from my phone. Duke rested at my feet, his ears flicking every so often. At 1:14 a.m., movement flashed on the screen. I straightened, my heart pounding. A shadow moved near my fence. Small, hunched, careful. Then the figure stepped into the dim glow of my back porch light. Karen. I gritted my teeth as I watched her push at my fence, testing the loosened boards. Then she walked toward my garden and dumped something into my flower bed before slipping back into the shadows. What the hell? I didn't sleep. At dawn, I marched outside and checked the flower bed. My stomach churned at the sight. Raw meat, laced with something. For Duke, a deep, trembling fury coiled inside me. This wasn't petty vandalism. This wasn't snide remarks. She was trying to hurt my dog. That was it. I wasn't playing defense anymore. Gathering allies. I walked straight to Mr. Patel's house. He answered in his robe, rubbing his eyes. Something wrong. I showed him the security footage. He watched, silent, then exhaled sharply. I knew she was a busybody, but this... He shook his head. "I need your help," I said. "She's going to keep escalating if I don't stop her now." He nodded. "Tell me what you need." Over the next few hours, I talked to the Johnsons and a few other neighbors. And slowly, piece by piece, the stories came out. She had harassed the teenager down the block for having too many visitors, his cousins. She called the HOA on the black family who had moved in last year over their loud music. They were playing jazz on a Sunday afternoon. She once accused the delivery driver of stalking her. She had been doing this for years. And the worst part? No one had ever stopped her. Until now, the final straw. I waited until the afternoon, when I knew she'd be outside. I called out, loud enough for the other neighbors to hear. Karen, we need to talk. She turned, eyes narrowing. I'm very busy. I held up my phone. Not as busy as you were last night. Her face paled. What are you talking about? I hit play. The footage was crystal clear. Her sneaking into my yard. Her trying to poison Duke. Mr. Patel stepped beside me. Then the Johnsons. Then another neighbor. One by one, people gathered. Watching. Judging. Karen's mouth opened and closed. This is ridiculous. I was just checking on things. I folded my arms. You mean trespassing? Tampering with my fence? Trying to kill my dog? The murmurs started. Disgusted whispers. What the hell is wrong with her? That's criminal. Karen turned red. This is harassment, she shrieked. You're all ganging up on me. No, Mr. Patel said calmly. We're holding you accountable. She spun, looking for an escape. But there was none. I stepped closer. You wanted me to feel unwelcome here. But now, you're the one who doesn't belong. Her lips trembled. For the first time, she looked afraid. Good. But this wasn't over. Because I had one more move to make. And she wasn't going to see it coming. Karen was cornered, but she wasn't done fighting. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and scoffed, her voice dripping with entitlement. This is ridiculous, she snapped, waving her hand dismissively at the gathered neighbors. I was checking on things. I have every right to make sure this neighborhood stays safe. I folded my arms. By sneaking into my yard at 1 a.m. and trying to poison my dog? Her eyes flickered with something. Panic? Guilt? But she recovered quickly, crossing her arms. Oh, please. That video could be anything. You're trying to set me up. I know people like you, always looking for a way to play the victim. There it was. The coded language. The dog whistle. The same tired excuse every racist pulls when they're caught red-handed. I kept my face neutral, calm, controlled. All right, Karen, I said, my voice steady. Let's test your little theory. I turned my phone around, tapped the screen, and let the audio play. I always keep records. Karen's own voice from our earlier conversation. Her smug confession that she had been watching me, monitoring me, targeting me. The neighbors went silent. Karen's face turned ghostly pale. I took a slow step forward, my voice carrying through the still air. Tell me, Karen, what exactly were you keeping records of? My mail? My guests? My movements? I tilted my head. Or were you just looking for a way to make sure someone like me never felt comfortable here? She sputtered. That's not. I hit another button. The next recording played. Security audio from the night before. The rustling of leaves. The faint scraping of a fence. And then, clear as day, her muttering under her breath. That mutt needs to disappear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's jaw snapped shut. And just like that, the power shifted. She had nothing left. No excuses. No denials. She turned wildly to the neighbors, searching for support. But all she found were cold, disgusted stares. Mr. Patel spoke first, his voice firm. That's attempted animal cruelty. Mrs. Johnson shook her head. You should be ashamed of yourself. Even the mild-mannered young dad from 2 houses down, someone who usually avoided drama, stepped forward. I let my kids play outside near your house. Now I have to wonder what else you're capable of. Karen was trembling now. She shook her head, her breath coming in short gasps. No, this is harassment. I'll call the HOA. You won't? I cut in smoothly. She turned to me, eyes blazing. Excuse me? I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. Because I already did. Karen blinked. What? And not just them, I continued. Animal control. The police. Oh, and I might have sent the footage to a local journalist. I shrugged. I hear they love a good story about entitled suburban racists. The blood drained from her face. She was done. She knew it. Everyone knew it. But Karen, being Karen, had to take one last shot. You think you've won? she spat, voice shaking. You think getting rid of me will make this neighborhood yours? I leaned in slightly, voice calm. It already is. That broke her. Her lips quivered, her breath hitched, and she let out an incoherent noise of rage before stomping back inside her house. The second the door slammed shut, the neighbors erupted. That was wild. Did you see her face? Serves her right. I exhaled, the tension finally leaving my shoulders as Mr. Patel clapped me on the back. That was impressive, he said. But what happens now? I glanced at Karen's house. Through the window, I could see her frantically on the phone, probably trying to salvage whatever was left of her reputation. I chuckled. Oh, I said. She's about to find out. Karen had retreated, but I knew she wasn't done. People like her never admit they've lost. They don't apologize. They don't reflect. They fight dirty. And I was ready. Karen's final play. The next morning, I woke up to something strange. A police car in front of my house. 2 officers stood at my door, stone-faced. I felt a sharp pang of déjà vu. Karen had done exactly what I expected. Flipped the script. When I opened the door, one officer, a burly man with a clipboard, spoke first. Sir, we received a complaint from a resident about threats and harassment. We'd like to ask you a few questions. I nearly laughed. She actually called the cops on me. I spotted her across the street, peeking from her window. She must have thought this was her redemption arc, that she could frame me as the aggressor and make this all disappear. But I had everything in place. I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my voice steady. Sure, officers. But before we begin, can I ask, have you reviewed the evidence I sent to your department? The officer frowned. What evidence? I pulled out my phone. Check your email. The unraveling. Within seconds, they had it. The security footage. The recordings. Everything. The moment Karen had been caught trespassing. The audio of her saying she was going to get rid of Duke. And the most damning clip? Her dumping poisoned meat into my yard. I watched the officers' expressions change as they scrolled. The burly one stiffened. The younger officer, who had looked mildly skeptical when they arrived, now shot a glance at Karen's house. I let the silence stretch before speaking. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that tampering with someone's property, attempting to harm their pet, and making a false police report are all crimes. The younger cop cleared his throat. Yeah, that's not great. The older one pursed his lips. We'll need to talk to her. I stepped aside, gesturing toward her house. Be my guest. The panic sets in. The moment the cops crossed the street, Karen burst out of her house in a spectacle. This is insane, she screeched. He set me up. He's harassing me. I called you for protection, but the officers weren't buying it. The burly one's voice was firm. Ma'am, we have security footage contradicting your claims. We're going to need you to come with us for questioning. She froze. What? You made a false police report. That's a criminal offense. The color drained from her face. Then, she did what people like her always do when their back is against the wall. She played the victim. Tears welled up instantly. Her voice wobbled. I was scared, she stammered, looking to the neighbors for sympathy. I was just trying to protect my community. But no one was buying it. Mr. Patel folded his arms. From what exactly? Mrs. Johnson scoffed. You mean from your own lies? Even the mild-mannered dad from earlier shook his head. You called the cops on an innocent man after trying to kill his dog. You deserve whatever's coming. Karen's breaths came in sharp bursts. She turned frantically to the cops. I have rights. You can't arrest me. I'll call my lawyer. The older officer sighed. Ma'am, no one said you were being arrested, but we do need to take you in for questioning. Her face twisted in fury. This is a setup, she howled. I'm the victim here. And then, she lunged at me. I saw it coming. The desperate, last-ditch attempt to flip the narrative. Her nails clawed toward my face, but before she could even touch me, Duke let out the deepest, most menacing growl I had ever heard. Karen froze, and then she did something even I didn't expect. She collapsed to the ground, wailing. "He set his dog on me," she shrieked. "I'm being attacked. This is a hate crime. I'm calling the media. I'm—" The officers slapped cuffs on her wrists. The public exposure. By that afternoon, Karen's entire life was crumbling in real time. The security footage had already been uploaded to the local neighborhood page. The comment section? A massacre. So Karen wasn't just an annoying HOA nightmare. She was actually dangerous? Someone tried to warn us about her months ago and we brushed it off. Never again. I used to think she was just nosy. I had no idea she was a straight-up criminal. Then the news picked it up. Not just the local news. National. It started with a viral tweet. Someone clipped the part where she screamed about a hate crime, while literally caught trespassing. Within hours, #CancelKaren was trending. The HOA released a statement condemning her actions. Her real estate license, because of course she was a realtor, was revoked pending investigation. Her husband filed for divorce. Her employer fired her within 24 hours. By the next day, Karen's house was empty. She had vanished. The final message. A week later, I received an anonymous letter in my mailbox. No name, no return address, just 3 words. "You ruined me." I laughed. "No, Karen. You did that yourself." The house stood empty now. The once pristine lawn was overgrown, the front porch abandoned, the curtains drawn. The for sale sign out front had been there for weeks, untouched. No one wanted to buy a house with Karen's stain all over it. She was gone. The fallout. After her arrest, Karen was hit with multiple charges: filing a false police report, trespassing, and attempted animal cruelty. The footage was everywhere, dissected on news channels, in Twitter threads, on TikTok. Her husband filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, which we all knew was code for "I don't want to go down with her." Her real estate license was revoked, and her former employer released a statement condemning her actions. Rumors spread that she had moved in with her sister in another state. But wherever she went, she couldn't escape her new title: the woman who tried to poison a dog and blame its black owner. The neighborhood's reckoning. At first, the neighborhood was uneasy. People who had once smiled at Karen's nosy remarks about who belonged here now avoided eye contact when I passed. Conversations in the Facebook group shifted, from HOA complaints to long overdue discussions about bias, privilege, and looking the other way. At a community meeting, Mrs. Johnson spoke up first. "I used to think Karen was just annoying," she admitted, shaking her head. "But the truth is, we let her get away with too much for too long." Others nodded. Mr. Patel sighed. "If we had spoken up earlier, maybe this wouldn't have escalated the way it did." That was the thing about people like Karen. They don't start with crimes. They start with whispers, looks, small tests to see what they can get away with. And for too long, everyone had let her. But not anymore. My peace reclaimed. One evening, as I sat on my porch, Duke stretched out beside me, tail wagging lazily. His ears perked up at the sound of approaching footsteps. I looked up. Mr. Patel, Mrs. Johnson, the young dad from down the street, a few others. They hesitated before stepping closer. "Hey," Mr. Patel said. "We're doing a neighborhood cleanup this weekend. Thought maybe you'd want to help us fix up the park." I raised a brow. "You guys want me involved?" Mrs. Johnson smiled. "You're part of this community. Always have been. It's time we acted like it." Something in my chest eased. For the first time in a long time, I looked around and saw a neighborhood that truly felt like mine. Karen had tried to push me out. Instead, she was the one who disappeared. Justice had been served, and I was finally home.